AR1. Listen carefully. This message is not for everyone. Some people have already clicked away because their spirit was not ready for what is about to be revealed. But you remain because something inside you has been restless lately. Something within you has been telling you that God is doing something powerful through your life. You felt it in the silence. You felt it during the heartbreak. You felt it in those moments when everyone walked away and you were left alone with nothing except your prayers, your tears, and your faith. Hear this clearly. They underestimated you because they judged your broken moments. They saw the struggle, but they never saw the anointing God placed upon your life. They laughed when you were going through difficult seasons. They ignored you when you were hurting. They betrayed you when you were loyal. They walked away when you needed love and support the most. But what they did not understand was that God was hiding you, preparing you, setting you apart, and making you stronger, because heaven does not reveal what it is building before the right time. And now the same people who ignored you, the same people who doubted you, the same people who spoke against your name are beginning to notice that something is different. They may not understand it, but they can feel it. Your spirit has changed. Your presence has changed. Your confidence has changed. God is transforming you right before their eyes. And that makes them uncomfortable because the person they believed they could destroy did not stay destroyed. You survived the pain. You survived the betrayal. You survived the battles nobody knew you were fighting. And now heaven is preparing to bring what was hidden into the light. Stay with me, because this next part matters. God is saying they thought the battle would finish you, but the battle revealed your strength. What was meant to crush you became the very thing that taught you how to stand. This was never only about what happened to you. It was about what was inside you that the struggle was trying to awaken. There was purpose in the pressure, and there was a reason you kept feeling different from everyone around you. Listen closely, because this is where many people misunderstand the journey. This was never simply an attack on your life. It was a fight against the purpose God placed within you, because darkness often recognizes what is valuable before you fully understand it yourself. That is why your road has felt so difficult. That is why you have often felt different. That is why you never seem to fit comfortably into places where everyone else seemed to belong. You wondered why you outgrew certain people so quickly. You wondered why your heart seemed older than your years. You wondered why certain connections could not follow you into every season. But perhaps you were not being rejected. Perhaps you were being redirected. Perhaps God was separating you from what could not survive in the next chapter of your life. You are being prepared for something greater than the version of yourself you knew before. And people who are deeply called into purpose rarely walk an easy road. They walk through fire before they understand why the fire was necessary. They cry in private before they stand strong in public. They experience isolation before they experience elevation. They lose certain relationships before they discover their true direction. And right now, you may be standing closer to transformation than you realize. The season of constant suffering does not have to define your future. A new season of clarity, growth, and revelation can begin. God is saying, they underestimated my child because they only saw the struggle. They did not see what I was creating through it. They saw weakness, but I was building endurance. They saw rejection, but I was creating separation. They saw loneliness, but I was teaching you how to hear my voice without depending on everyone else's approval. They saw you falling, but I was teaching you how to rise differently. And if you have been wondering why everything had to happen the way it did, keep listening, because there is something you need to understand about the process. One of the hardest parts of being set apart is that people rarely understand what God is doing while the work is still happening. People usually celebrate the result. They notice the victory. They applaud the breakthrough. They talk about the success. But they do not see the process that came before it. They never witnessed the nights you cried yourself to sleep. They never heard the prayers you whispered when you had no words left. They never saw the moments when you questioned everything and wondered whether God had forgotten you. They did not see how many times you had to encourage yourself just to make it through another day. They did not see the moments when you begged God for an answer while heaven seemed completely silent. But hear this clearly. Silence does not always mean abandonment. Sometimes silence is where preparation takes place. Sometimes God is working beneath the surface while nothing appears to be changing around you. While everyone thought you were losing, something inside you was being strengthened. While they thought you were falling behind, you were learning lessons they could not see. You were developing patience. You were developing wisdom. You were becoming harder to shake. You were learning the difference between people who truly support you and people who only celebrate you when you are useful to them. Your hardest moments were not necessarily wasted moments. Every tear taught you something. Every rejection redirected something. Every heartbreak revealed something. Every closed door forced you to look for another path. God allowed certain people to leave because they were not meant to enter every chapter of your future. Some people were part of the lesson, not the destination. Some were temporary connections, not permanent companions. And yes, it hurt because you cared deeply. You remained loyal. You gave people your heart even when your own spirit was exhausted. You gave chances when others would have walked away. You believed in people who did not always know how to value what you gave them, but many people only knew how to receive your kindness without respecting the person behind it. And when God saw that your spirit was being drained, He began to create distance between you and what was weakening you. Maybe that separation felt painful at first. Maybe you thought you were losing something important. But stay with me, because sometimes what feels like loss is actually protection in disguise. He removed them, not to hurt you, but to protect you. Listen carefully, because some separations are actually heaven's rescue plan. You thought you were being rejected, but God was removing distractions. You thought everything around you was falling apart, but heaven was making room and clearing the road ahead. Hear this clearly. The isolation you experienced was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to draw you closer to God. When God wants to transform a person, sometimes He separates them from the noise, from false love, from confusion, and from environments that keep them from growing. Suddenly, you found yourself alone. Nobody was checking on you. Nobody seemed to understand you. Nobody could see how much pain you were carrying. But something powerful happened inside that loneliness. You began hearing God more clearly. You started noticing small signs, quiet confirmations, and warnings that did not always make sense to the people around you. You began paying attention to moments that could not easily be explained. And that change unsettled certain people. They noticed that you were becoming different, quieter, more observant, more aware, more careful about who you allowed into your life. You stopped chasing approval. You stopped begging people to accept you. You stopped making yourself smaller just to fit into spaces where your heart was never truly valued. And suddenly, the same people who once ignored you started watching you more closely because something about your presence had changed. Listen closely. Real spiritual depth cannot be copied. It is not about money. It is not about status. It is not about appearance. It is about what has been built inside you through everything you have survived. And when God places His hand upon someone's life, people can sense that something is different. That is why you have faced strange struggles, unexpected betrayals, sudden accusations, jealousy, and resistance from people you once helped. Sometimes your growth makes people uncomfortable because your light reveals what they have been trying not to face. Stay with me, because this next part is important. Not everyone who celebrates you is truly happy about your progress. Some people watch from a distance because they are confused by your strength. They study how you keep moving forward. They notice your peace. They notice your endurance. They wonder how you are still standing after everything you have gone through. But they never witnessed the private battles that produced that strength. They never saw you praying when your heart was racing. They never saw you crying when you were completely exhausted. They never saw you trying to hold yourself together while everything inside you felt shattered. Listen, there were moments when you almost gave up. There were nights when the pain felt too heavy. There were moments when you questioned your direction, your purpose, and even your future. You asked God, why does my life feel so difficult? And heaven heard every word. God saw every tear. He saw every sleepless night. He saw every quiet breakdown. He saw every moment when you wanted to stop but decided to keep going anyway. And today, God is reminding you, I never abandoned you. When the room felt empty, He was there. When people betrayed you, He was there. When your prayers seemed to have no answer, He was still there. He was working behind the scenes, arranging things you could not see, protecting you from situations you did not even know were coming. Listen carefully. The struggle believed that isolation would make you weaker. Instead, isolation trained you. It taught you discernment. It taught you patience. It taught you endurance. It taught you how to keep standing without applause, without validation, and without constant support from other people. And now you no longer need everyone to believe in you before you trust what God is doing. That is strength. That is growth. That is maturity. You learned how to stand when nobody was clapping. You learned how to pray when nobody was listening. You learned how to keep believing when circumstances gave you every reason to doubt. And if you have been wondering why you had to walk through all of this, keep listening, because the answer is becoming clearer. Hear this clearly. The person emerging from this season is stronger than the person who entered it. They're not strong because of anger, but strong because of spiritual depth. You survived things that once seemed capable of destroying you, and surviving them changed you. The fire refined you. The pain matured you. The betrayal opened your eyes. The disappointment taught you discernment. Now you notice things you once ignored. Your spirit is more sensitive. Your boundaries are stronger. Your connection with God is deeper. And people can sense that difference. That is why certain people suddenly became distant. Your peace can reveal their chaos. Your discipline can reveal their excuses. Your faith can expose their fear. Some people were comfortable with a version of you that constantly doubted yourself. They were comfortable when you questioned your value. They were comfortable when you accepted less than you deserved. But something changes when they see you healing. Healed people do not need to keep proving themselves. God is saying they were comfortable when you did not know who you were. But now you are discovering your identity. And once you understand who you are and whose you are, everything begins to change. You stop begging for love. You stop chasing approval. You stop lowering your standards just to keep people around. You stop explaining your worth to people who have already decided not to recognize it. Why? Because you finally understand that God does not need anyone else's permission to validate what He placed inside you. Hear this carefully. The pressure may have increased, but pressure does not mean you have been forgotten. Sometimes pressure comes when something inside you is being strengthened. The struggle may have become intense, but that does not mean the story is ending. It may mean you are learning how to carry what you once prayed for. Darkness does not get the final word over your life. God does. And He is saying, you survived every attack because I placed strength within you before the battle ever arrived. Think about everything you have already overcome. Look at you. You are still here, still breathing. You're still praying, still believing, still moving forward. That is not weakness. That is evidence that you were stronger than the season that tried to defeat you. Listen closely. People may have believed your silence meant that you had nothing left. They were wrong. Your silence was not emptiness, it was rebuilding. While you were quiet, God was rebuilding your mind, rebuilding your heart, rebuilding your confidence, rebuilding your identity, rebuilding your faith. He was helping you become someone who no longer depends on outside approval to know their value. And now the same people who once underestimated you can sense that something is changing. They can feel that your rise is approaching. That is why some people seem uneasy around you now. Your presence no longer asks for permission. Your spirit no longer lives in fear of rejection. You have survived too much to keep living small. You have cried too many tears to keep returning to the same places that broke you. God allowed you to walk through dark places so your life could eventually become a source of light for someone else. Your testimony will encourage people. Your survival will give someone else courage. Your breakthrough will become proof that difficult seasons do not have to be permanent. People may be surprised when they see you rise because they remember the version of you that was struggling. They remember the moments when you had almost nothing left, but they did not know what God was building in secret. And that is the part they never expected. God specializes in renewal. He can bring strength from suffering. He can bring wisdom from pain. He can bring purpose from disappointment. He can bring victory from seasons that look completely hopeless. And now something is changing. Doors are beginning to open. Your discernment is becoming sharper. Your peace is returning. Your confidence is growing. Your faith is becoming steadier. And the people who laughed before may no longer understand what they are seeing, because heaven is revealing what was hidden. God is saying, my child, you were hidden, not forgotten. Remember that. You were not overlooked by heaven just because people overlooked you. You were not abandoned just because certain people left. There was a purpose even in the silence. There was preparation even in the waiting. Listen carefully. Pressure can shape what comfort never could. Crushing can produce what ease cannot reveal. And the difficult seasons of your life have been shaping qualities inside you that will matter in the next chapter. So do not hate your process. Do not resent every lonely season. Do not curse the chapter that taught you how to stand. One day you may look back and realize that the pain you wanted to escape was also developing the strength you now carry. The rejection taught you independence. The betrayal taught you discernment. The loneliness taught you how to hear God without needing everyone around you to agree. The waiting taught you patience. The struggle taught you endurance. And now something is shifting in your life. You can feel it. The old version of you is fading. The fearful version, the insecure version, the version that tolerated disrespect just to keep people close, the version that kept begging people to stay, the version that constantly questioned whether you were enough. That version does not have to control your future anymore. God is removing the mindset that kept you trapped in survival, because where He is taking you, you need a stronger way of thinking. You are entering a season of greater strength, greater wisdom, greater peace, and greater clarity. And if you have felt restless lately, do not ignore that feeling. Pay attention. Something inside you is changing. The old patterns are losing their power. The old fears are becoming easier to recognize. The old attachments are beginning to loosen. You are learning to walk without carrying everything that once weighed you down. You are learning that not every door needs to remain open. Not every person needs access to you. Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every opinion deserves your attention. And this is where your next chapter begins. Heaven is preparing movement. The season that felt stuck is beginning to shift. The silence is not empty. The waiting is not wasted. The preparation is not pointless. God has been working in places you could not see, and soon what was happening in secret will begin to produce visible change. So stay ready. Keep your faith strong. Keep your heart steady, because what you survived was not the end of your story. It was preparation for the person you are becoming. Chosen ones often feel restless before elevation because God begins moving them away from environments that no longer fit the future He is preparing for them. Suddenly, conversations that once felt exciting begin to feel empty. Certain friendships start feeling forced. Places that used to feel familiar suddenly feel heavy. You cannot always explain it, but something inside you knows that something has changed. That is not always random. It can be a sign of transition. God may be disconnecting you from an old season so you can make room for something new. And yes, it can feel lonely. Transformation often does, because not everyone is meant to walk into every chapter with you. Hear this clearly. Some people were connected to your past, but they were never meant to follow you into your future. And one of the hardest truths to accept is that sometimes the people you love deeply were never sent to help you grow. Some relationships tested your discernment. Some exposed wounds you needed to heal. Some taught you how to stop abandoning yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. Listen, the betrayal hurt so deeply because your heart was sincere. You loved with depth. You forgave again and again. You gave people opportunity after opportunity, even while your own heart was tired. But now God is teaching you something different. No more shrinking yourself. No more settling for less. No more giving people unlimited access to your peace while they bring confusion into your life. Your calling requires clarity. Your future requires boundaries. Hear this carefully, because this part may speak directly to you. There were people who secretly wanted you to fail. People who smiled while quietly doubting you. People who felt comfortable watching you struggle because your light made them uncomfortable. But that season is changing, because God is lifting you out of survival mode. You are becoming stronger emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, and people can sense that change before you even say a word. Listen closely. When a person begins awakening to their purpose, their entire presence can change. Their eyes change, their attitude changes, their choices change, their discernment becomes sharper. They stop ignoring warning signs. They stop entertaining constant negativity. They stop chasing what God has already removed from their path. And suddenly the people who once controlled access to your love, approval, or acceptance no longer have the same power over you. That change can make certain people uncomfortable, because a wounded person is easier to influence, but a healed person begins making decisions from strength instead of fear. God is saying, I allowed the pain to teach you your value, and now you finally understand it. Not everyone deserves access to your heart. Not everyone deserves your energy. Not everyone deserves your loyalty. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to what God is building in your life. Listen carefully. There is a reason you survived things that seemed capable of destroying you. God placed endurance inside you before you ever knew you would need it. You were not created to live exactly like everyone else. That may be why your life has felt different for so long. Even when you were younger, you may have noticed things others ignored. You may have felt situations more deeply. You may have struggled to connect with shallow conversations or environments that felt empty inside. You wondered why fitting in seemed so difficult. But perhaps your life was never meant to be built around simply fitting in. Purpose can make you feel different, because purpose requires depth. And sometimes that depth creates separation. God may separate before He elevates. He may remove distractions before revealing direction. He may loosen unhealthy attachments before opening the next door. That is why your life has sometimes felt like a cycle of endings, followed by unexpected new beginnings. You are learning not to build your identity around temporary people, because your deepest identity comes from God. Stay with me, because there is more you need to hear. There were seasons when you felt invisible. You felt overlooked. You felt forgotten. You felt unappreciated. You wondered if anyone noticed the sacrifices you were making. But heaven saw what people missed. Every act of kindness, every quiet sacrifice, every prayer you whispered through tears, every time you helped someone while secretly fighting your own battles. God saw it all. Nothing was hidden from Him. And now you may be entering a season where what was happening privately begins to produce visible results. Hear this clearly. Your breakthrough may not remain only an internal experience. People may eventually see the peace you fought for, the confidence you rebuilt, the opportunities that appeared, the favor you never expected, and the restoration that seemed impossible during your hardest days, God can honor endurance that nobody else applauded. Listen closely. Some people are surprised that you did not collapse after everything you went through. They expected you to become bitter. They expected you to stay angry. They expected you to fail. But instead, you became wiser. You became more careful. You became stronger. Most importantly, you became closer to God. And that is what makes the story powerful. The pain was supposed to destroy your hope, but instead it awakened something inside you. The rejection was supposed to make you feel worthless, but it taught you your value. The loneliness was supposed to make you desperate for attention, but it taught you how to become comfortable with your own growth. Hear this clearly. The next chapter of your life will require courage because growth attracts attention, and not everyone who celebrates your success will genuinely support you. This is why discernment matters more now. God is teaching you to protect your peace. Not every invitation is meant for you. Not every opportunity is aligned with your purpose. Not every relationship deserves access to your spirit. Not every open door is a door you should walk through. Sometimes wisdom is knowing when to say no. Sometimes obedience is walking away even when everyone else tells you to stay. And sometimes protection looks like distance. Keep listening, because this is where many people make the wrong choice. Your sensitivity is not something you need to be ashamed of. Your ability to notice changes, patterns, and warning signs can become part of your wisdom. You do not have to apologize for paying attention to what feels wrong, but remember to test your feelings with wisdom, prayer, truth, and good judgment, rather than letting fear control you. Stop constantly ignoring the discomfort that tells you something needs closer attention. Stop dismissing repeated warning signs simply because you want a situation to work. Sometimes the answer has been in front of you for a long time. You just needed the courage to accept it.
Hear this clearly.
The delay was not necessarily denial. Sometimes timing matters because a blessing received too early can become a burden you are not prepared to carry. God may have been developing your character before expanding your circumstances. The pain matured you, the waiting strengthened your patience, the silence taught you to keep moving without constant reassurance, the closed doors taught you that rejection can sometimes redirect you towards something better. You may have wondered why certain things did not happen when you wanted them to, but now you may be beginning to understand. You are becoming the person capable of handling what you once prayed for, and that transformation could not be rushed. There were lessons you needed to learn, boundaries you needed to build, patterns you needed to break, people you needed to release, or fears you needed to confront. And now, as those things begin changing, your life can feel unfamiliar again. Do not panic simply because the old version of your life no longer feels comfortable. Sometimes discomfort is the beginning of growth. Sometimes restlessness is the signal that you have outgrown something. Sometimes the silence is making room for a clearer voice. So do not run back to what God helped you leave just because the new path feels uncertain. You have already survived the chapter that once frightened you. Now learn to trust the strength that chapter created. The future will require a different version of you, and that version is already being formed.